It's a humid, gray-looking day in New Orleans, but it's a perfect day for racing. This afternoon, the typically quiet Louisiana bayou will explode with the sound of thunder, but not from the dark gray skies. It'll be from a pack of Spec Corvette V8 engines laying down rubber at every corner exit. We'll all watch from on board the beasts themselves as they do battle in a 25-minute race. This is Spec Corvette, presented by Nankang Motorsport Tires, America's fastest-growing budget racing series. Welcome to NOLA Motorsports. My name's Kyle Heyer, joining you from Chicago, Illinois, as we race at NOLA Motorsports this afternoon. Of course, Spec Corvette is a national race series that started in Southern California and has grown to several other regions, including Florida, NOLA, the Great Lakes, Colorado, and the Northeast. It's an official SCCA class and a NASA class in most regions. These cars here this afternoon will be on 200 treadwear Nankang NS2R street tires, and their cars are as stock as possible with select parts to improve their reliability. Some of those parts include Penske Racing shocks, Nankang Motorsport NS2R 295/3018 tires, Willwood disc brakes, TPS Motorsports parts, as well as Redline Oil official racing oils and fluids, Track Spec Motorsports vents, racing radiators, aero and sway bars, Spec Racing wheels and prefab roll cages, and Sparco USA equipment for driver safety, belts, seats, and more. Today's event will be a 25-minute race, and these cars on street tires are going to be a lot of fun to slide around here with 380 rear wheel horsepower around the 17-turn NOLA Motorsports Park. We're running the configuration with the S's out of turn number 9, so a couple left, right, to challenge these Corvette chassis. These are all C5 Corvettes with the coupe or the hatch version allowed here this afternoon. The engines are stock LS6 motors with surprise dyno testing to ensure the fair competition. We've got 7 drivers lined up to go racing here for 25 minutes. We'll race 40 minutes tomorrow with an inverted grid and round out our racing weekend here at NOLA Motorsports. Cars working their way through the twisty bits here. This is a fast and bumpy racetrack. The front straightaway on the longest configuration of this track is over a mile long. We'll be cutting it about 30% shorter with our 90-degree right-hand turn number 1. But we'll see speeds well over 140 down into that braking zone before a very tight, challenging section leading into another fast area on the backside of the racetrack. So much momentum to carry here for 25 minutes, and these cars will have to keep the rear tires up underneath them for the entire day to make sure that they stay up front. With the field coming out of turn number 16 and 17, the pace car will peel off for Spec Corvette, presented by Nankang Motorsport Tires from NOLA Motorsports. Up front, Ben Hocevar, Alex Hocevar, the father and son front row, then Wayne Caudle, Rod Markovits, Taylor Ramey, Chad Ross, and Walt Davisson taking the green flag. As the first part of the grid goes under the field, we've got the Spec Corvette still rolling their way around the final corner, so they'll get their own separate green flag. Like I said, father and son crew on the front row, then Wayne Caudle, Rod Markovits, Taylor Ramey, Chad Ross, and Walt Davisson rounding out our 7-car grid. Now, past the concrete dividers from pit lane on the front straight, green flag flies, and we're racing in Spec Corvette, presented by Nankang Motorsport Tires. Under the bridge, Ben Hocevar pulls ahead in the blue car. He's in a straight line all the way down to turn number 1 on board now with Walt Davisson. Lock up there from the 222 car, jumping on the binders 3 wide into turn number 1 over the bumps. Some more lockup smoke from the race leader. Through the first corner, Davisson runs wide. Here comes the silver car. That's Hocevar up the inside, side by side. Father and son battle through turn number 3. Now driver's right. Ben Hocevar is going to pull ahead. Alexis on the brakes. Some smoke from the blue car of Ben Hocevar as we roll through the next corner here. That, of course, is turn number 4. Now back to the right. Ben pulls ahead now. Almost clear. Alexis hanging tough on the outside. Going to try a crossover. Big puddles on the inside from a rain earlier. And now trying to get the traction out of the rear tires, back up through the gears, through turn number 6, a right-hand kink on the brakes for just a moment, then kink it to the right, grab the curb there. On board now with Rod Markovits in the green and silver car. And now heading back towards the backside of the racetrack. So fast here. Rod Markovits from Mandeville, Louisiana, home race for him. And moved from racing a C4 Corvette in NASA to the C5 Z06 as he follows the father-son duo into the S's for the first time. To the right, back to the left through turn number 10. Still smoke pouring out of Ben Hocevar's lead Corvette in the blue car. Back to the right, watching the curbs here. There might still be some water in the seam between the curbing and the pavement. You just saw Ben Hocevar slam through some of it, kicking up some water. Alexis runs a little bit wide on the exit here on the run down to turn 14 on the brakes. Hardest braking zone here other than turn 1. So 1, 2, 3. It's Ben Hocevar, Alexis Hocevar, and Rod Markovits up to 3rd after starting in 4th. Wayne Caudle, I believe, had some issues on the initial race start. Huge puddle on the inside of turn 16. they're going to have to avoid here. And the bumps here are so violent that they will collect race water or rainwater, and you'll have to avoid those, especially on the corner exits. Now onto the front straightaway, lap 1 complete. Ben Hocevar under the bridge, Alexis, and then Rod Markovits 1, 2, 3. It's a significant gap back to the 4th place car. That will be Chad Ross in the 29 Corvette. Behind him, Taylor Ramey. Walt Davisson drops down a couple positions, actually up a couple positions. Looks like one of our drivers, Wayne Caudle, did not make it around to complete his first lap. No timing loop for him just yet. Rod Markovits in some traffic here. This is going to get very busy. Ben and Alexis have already gone by. There's an MX-5 on driver's right. Speed difference here is going to be not as significant in the twisty bits as it will be on the fast bits here, especially on the street tires. Having to run a little wide to avoid the water on the inside of the racetrack. Now back up through the gears again. Across the line the first time through. And Hocevar leads his father by 1.6 seconds, and then a full second back to Rod Markovits in the number 65 back in 3rd place. Again, a 25-minute race. Tire conservation will be the name of the game here, keeping the tire temperatures low. And this is something that the rainwater might help to do if you can dip the tires off in the water to cool them off, almost like you do with a rain tire. Now through the S's once more. Ben Hocevar building a lead on his father in that silver car behind him. Still on board with Rod Markovits. Trying to maintain a gap here. Keep the tires from sliding. Big puddle there on driver's left in turn number 12. On the binders again for turn 14. Grabs some curb there to shorten up the racetrack. Now on board with Alexis Hocevar here as we head into turn 15 and 16 up the inside. And it looks like Ben Hocevar peeled off to the left. Alexis will jump to the race lead. Hocevar looks like he's heading to pit lane. Potential problems for the race leader. We saw some smoke emanating from that car, so potentially some engine or transmission issues across the line. This time it'll be Alexis Hocevar taking the race lead away from his son.
That's interesting that we see some smoke there coming out of that car, Kyle. Ben just got that car together from an engine failure over last season, so you got to wonder what happened to that engine.
Yeah, we've seen these cars get a little smoky before, so it's not typically a huge alarm to see them emanating a little bit of smoke, but that was quite a bit, and we saw it a lot on the downshifts as well. But hopefully that is not a terminal failure for Ben. But looks like Alexis Hocevar and Rod Markovits are going to have a pretty good battle, but a pretty frantic start, especially with some traffic there. So I think now that that's sorted out, it should be a little bit more clear sailing for these drivers and can just focus on each other. A little bit of smoke out of Alexis's car as well, but it doesn't look like as enough to be much of a concern.
Yeah.
Back up through the gears again. Turn number 6, this jump on the brakes just for a second. Big bumps there on the corner entry. A lot of curbing on track out. You don't really want to get up on top of, especially if there's a lot of water collecting there. That paint can be very slippery. A little big slide there for Markovits exiting turn number 8. And now the run down to the S's once more. So with Ben Hocevar pulling off the racetrack, we're down from 7 cars down to 5. Wayne Caudle also pulled off. Started in 3rd place. We saw him slow on the front straightaway, so maybe going up through the gears, heard or saw something that he didn't like and has peeled off the racetrack. But Markovits is closing up here on Alexis Hocevar through the S's here. I think Rod's car might be a little bit better sorted and closing the gap here. And it's all about rear tire temperature and managing that, especially with the slick conditions. It'd be so easy to slide the rear end here and heat up those tires to the point where they're just not much use at the end of this race. A lot of water on the inside of that final corner.
The hood up on that car right now. They're inspecting on what's going on, so it might be some kind of an oil leak. I'm not sure what they see, but they definitely got the hood up right now on that car.
Yeah, so the Hocevar's car in the pits. We saw Rod Markovits 4 tires off on the curbing at the exit of turn 17. That's got to be a rough ride out there. Now the run down to turn number 1. We'll see if he can close up and maybe go for a pass, but not close enough this time. Alexis seems like he's got the straight line speed here. Again, all these cars in theory have a 380 horsepower rear wheel cap, but it seems like he just got the better run out of the corner. We saw Rod run a little wide and might have given up some pace, but in the twistier bits, that's where Rod seems to close up on the brakes and through the tight and twisty sections. See Alexis struggling for that rear tire grip here. So across the line this time, race leader Alexis Hocevar, then 1 second back as Rod Markovits, who was a little bit slower that time, 4/10 slower. Check that. He was actually a half-second quicker looking at best versus previous. So Rod Markovits is the quicker car right now. Taylor Ramey's up a couple spots. He's jumped into 3rd place overall. He started back in 5th, so +2 for him. And Alexis Hocevar running a little wider line through there to avoid the water on the inside. Now Markovits closing up a bit of slipstream here. And again, the speeds climb high enough where this will be a significant force. Again, acting like a snowplow for air, but probably a bigger deal on the front straightaway than entering the S's. Alexis a little bit off the apex, but again, later apexing there to try to straight line this a bit more. Rod's definitely closing up here. But can he keep pace? The real passing opportunity here is down into turn number 1, and if he can't get close enough there, he's going to have a real hard time getting by him. Now on the brakes again. Big jump over the curb on driver's right. Oh, big moment there for Alexis Hocevar, gathering it back up, counter steers, hangs onto it for now. Then on the binders just a little bit. Swinging through turns 15, 16, and 17. Another touch on the brakes to get the car rotated, and now back on throttle, hammer down, 380 horsepower to the rear wheels as we enter the front straightaway. Looks like Alexis Hocevar is going to maintain that lead, but going a little bit defensive down the front straight here. Markovits following in the slipstream as they come across the line. Very well sorted. It's a long ways back to find Taylor Ramey, Walt Davisson, and more. As entering turn 1, look at Markovits, closes up on the brakes again here. So good in these the first and last sectors especially, but the middle is where it seems like that leader can pull away just a little bit. On the brakes again. More point and shoot out of the race leader I'm seeing, but he's struggling with these longer corners. See the car's rear end moving around, kind of skipping across the surface, and doesn't seem to quite have it. Again, entering way outside and kind of tucking in tight at the end and maximizing the straight line speed here, and sort of hoping that that'll pull him away from Rod, who seems to be taking a tighter line, but making up more ground here in the twisty bits. Big jump over the inside curb there for Rod, who's been a little bit more aggressive on the curbing around here. And you can use some of it, but it can be also be pretty rough and wet collecting water in the ripple curbing especially. And now I expect Rod to get right up on the tailpipes of the race leader here of Alexis Hocevar through the S's. Closes so much on the binders here. That's only half a car length now for the race lead. Alexis Hocevar feeling the pressure in the mirror from Rod Markovits behind him. Working lap number 5. And looks like Markovits is going to close up a little bit more here in turns 14, 15, and 16. But that front straightaway is where looks like Alexis Hocevar has been able to pull away again. Ben Hocevar out of the car. That car obviously done for the day.
Maybe we can just swing over to Ben's camera and see what he has to say what happened. Hey, Ben, can you hear us?
Hey, guys.
What do we got?
So this is the motor out of the car, Rod's old car that caught on fire. And it had a king cert in the crankshaft for the balancer. And I believe the king cert failed. So the balancer walked forward, started shooting oil everywhere. So
that's a tough, man. You were having a good run there, Ben. That's fortunate. You're having a real good run. Of course, during the race and all morning it was fine, right? All morning.
Yeah. The end of the first race, I had some power steering leakage, and corrected all of that. And then I guess she started back out. So
that's unfortunate. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Your race leader with some unfortunate incident going on with the front motor oil pulling out of the front of the motor there. But that's racing.
Yeah, tough break for Ben there. And you could tell that he knew something was wrong, probably just smelling it before he even saw the smoke. Oh, big slide for Rod. He's going to loop it at the exit. I believe that's turn number 7 or 8. Spins around.
Oh, nice save.
And 360, and he'll pull away, but loses a bunch of ground on the race leader. Big slide there. And that could have been just from unsettling the rear, trying to get power down too early. Sees the rabbit in front of him trying to chase there and just couldn't keep the car straight. Also, I'm sure the surface isn't ideal. So bumpy and a little bit of moisture still remaining. So that just makes that so much more challenging. Still sliding the rear end around. Now the tires will be extra hot. I'm sure he smoked and pulling away there as well. So I think Rod Markovits probably got to cool those tires down to launch another attack. But he's got a long way to catch up to Alexis Hocevar now. Through turn 13, gathering it back up, he'll continue. I don't think he lost any positions. He will lose a bunch of time. Taylor Ramey was about 24 seconds behind the race leader the last time they came around to the start-finish line. So this time through, Alexis Hocevar should have a much expanded lead, but that doesn't mean he's in the clear here. He can certainly back it down, but it's so easy to make a mistake. That time through, Hocevar ran a 1:59.4. The previous lap, Markovits was 2 seconds quicker. That time it was a 2:05.3, so he's only lost about 6 seconds in that, which is pretty impressive considering he looped it in one of the faster parts of the racetrack. On board now with Walt Davisson, who started this race back in 7th. He has jumped up to 4th place now, a little ways behind the leaders. With up the road, it's going to be about 8 seconds before he can find Taylor Ramey in the 222 car, who just crossed the start-finish line. There's that gap you can see as Walt Davisson crosses the line under the timing and scoring tower. Back on board with Rod Markovits. And I'm curious to see if he
Good place to watch.
Oh, big slide through that.
Good
that
place
corner
to
as well.
watch.
Throttling back up. A big puddle there on the right. I was here for another series a couple months ago. We had a morning event with plenty of puddles of water around here. We actually saw some drivers on wets that actually drove through the puddles on purpose. Won't be seeing a whole lot of that here today, but just to keep the tires cool, they would run through the puddles. There was plenty of them around the racetrack to choose from. So I'm curious if Rod Markovits can find some pace here now that he's got a rabbit a little bit higher up the road. I wonder if Hocevar was holding him back a little bit. We could see some faster laps here out of Markovits in the closing moments of this race. We are 7 laps in, 13 minutes, about 10 minutes remaining in this 25-minute event. Big climb over the curb there for Rod, so he's not slowing down at all, even after the spin at the exit of 7. And keeping an eye on the traffic potentially for Alexis Hocevar. Last time by was about 10 seconds quicker than the car in front, which is a different category vehicle, but he's still about 25 seconds to the clear of that. So it shouldn't be too big of a deal as we come across the line this time to complete lap number 8. There is your race leader, Alexis Hocevar. What's his lap time? A 1:59.9. He's definitely slowed his pace. If Markovits can be right back on a 1:58 or 1:59 flat, he would be closing quick enough to get back to him. That time through a 2:01.824, so a little slower. He's dropped some time, and I wonder if that's because of the tire temp he's got in the rears. But on the brakes hard through turn number 1, certainly challenging the braking zones here. These cars are usually equipped with ABS, and I believe, judging by how deep Markovits drove there into turn 1, he's also equipped with that anti-lock braking system. And of course, not motorsport grade ABS. This would be stock C6 ABS, slowing the cars down, and especially if the track is still moist in some areas, that could be helpful. Seeing a lot of rubbered in areas as well, so that's probably helping. But just getting to the edge of the water through turn number 5.
Yeah, the stock ABS system for the C5 Corvette is just, it's probably one of the Achilles heels of the car. Looks like we got a white flag out there, but it looks like the ABS systems on these cars are pretty, they're not very robust. A lot of people upgrade them to a BMW, but that's not allowed in our system. But that's part of the things that you have to deal with in a Spec Corvette, keep it a budget series. But you definitely have to keep an eye on your ABS system and not overuse it. If you overuse it, it will bite you back.
Right, and I'm sure that's probably not great for the front tire temp as well. We've been talking a lot about the rear tire temp and making sure that you're not overheating those tires, but I'm sure it's not great to be on the ABS hammering at every corner either. So white flag is in the air for this front crew. Are we going to get the white for the Spec Corvette class as well, do you think? Guess we'll see this time through. We should have Alexis Hocevar now through the final corner. He's entering the final complex now. If we see the white flag, this will mean that this is going to be the final lap of this race. And with Hocevar out front by 8.5 seconds, this would certainly be an easy cruise to victory after a couple of his competitors had some trouble. His son returning to the pits early. And there is the white flag. One more lap around for Alexis Hocevar in the number 26 out front. Rod Markovits trying to close up. I'm not sure if he's going to get there, though, across the line this time. Trying to recover after his spin. Across the line 2:01.5. So it looks like those rear tires have dropped off a little bit more for Rod. But on board now with Alexis Hocevar, final lap here. And shouldn't really have any traffic to contend with. Should be pretty clear sailing all the way to the end here. Jump over the curbing through the middle portion of this infield. A lot of back and forth through this first sector. Very tight, twisty, second gear, maybe some third. And then climbing up through fourth and then into fifth as you head onto the back straightaway. And again, there is a configuration of this course where you can just straight shot from turn 10 all the way down to turn 13 or 14. But again, we're running the layout with a couple S's to slow the cars down a little bit and require some more modulation of that steering effort. So through turn number 7, this is the area where Rod Markovits had his loop earlier, but Alexis Hocevar negotiates it nicely. And is cruising now to a victory on the weekend. So tomorrow's race will be a field invert, which will be interesting to see if Markovits can hang on and keep Hocevar behind him tomorrow morning. Because I think they were very similar in pace, just didn't quite have the opportunity to strike and wasn't fast in the area where he needed to be fast, which is entering turn number 1. Was very quick through the S's section, but couldn't really capitalize on it. Final complex now, turn 14 for Alexis Hocevar. Started on the front row alongside his son, who dropped out early with mechanical issues. Some oil dropping onto some components of that car and producing a big plume of smoke. Ended up heading to pit lane and discovering some issues with that motor. But for the final corner, from the front row to victory, Alexis Hocevar holds off an attack from Rod Markovits. Checkered flag waves, and Spec Corvette, presented by Nankang Motorsport Tires, race 1 of the weekend, goes to Alexis Hocevar in the number 26 car. Rod Markovits in the 65 for a spin to second will come on home across the line this time with a gap of about 10 seconds. So I wonder if tomorrow Rod Markovits can hang up there with Alexis Hocevar and hang on to the position, as with the inverted grid, he will start in front of that silver Corvette C5. Taylor Ramey should bring home a third-place position, and Walt Davisson behind him. Chad Ross finishing out the rest of the grid here. But Davisson still working through the backside of the S's, still checkered flag falling for the remainder of the session. Tomorrow morning's race will be an invert grid in a slightly longer event. And we saw a little bit of saving come into effect there. I think Alexis Hocevar held on to pace longer than Rod Markovits did. But Taylor Ramey, especially, I'm curious to see what his drop-off is. His last lap was a 2:02.8, and his best lap was a 2:01.9. So looking at Taylor Ramey in terms of just fall-off, didn't push as hard and didn't drop 3 or 4 seconds off pace like we saw with Alexis Hocevar, who ran a full 5 seconds slower on his final lap versus his best. So I think that drop off because of the tire temp will be a big factor. And that's just because you got so much horsepower to fairly skinny street tires here that we're running on these cars. So cross the line, checkered flag for the last couple drivers. But Spec Corvette, presented by Nankang Motorsports Tires, race 1 of the weekend is complete. Final thoughts, that was a pretty wild one, especially with Rod looping at the exit of turn 7, but treacherous conditions and it's bumpy out there.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if Ben can get that car together tonight. If it sounds like if it's just the front balancer, he should be able to push that thing back in and get the crank bolt on that and set it back in there. I don't think it's going to take him out of the weekend. So interested to see if they're going to be able to fix that tonight and have the race leader get back onto the track tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. One more run through the results. Again, Alexis Hocevar, Rod Markovits, Taylor Ramey, Walt Davisson, Chad Ross. Then, of course, it was Ben Hocevar and Wayne Caudle, who was out on the opening lap, didn't even complete one. We saw a car slow on the initial start. That could have been that 56 car peeling off. So we'll get an update for you on that tomorrow morning. But very good race for the start of the weekend. Again, Rod and Alexis, that's the battle we'll be watching tomorrow morning. Make sure you join us right here on the Spec Corvette Facebook page. I'm Kyle Heyer. We'll see you tomorrow at NOLA Motorsports for race number 2, the longer inverted grid race for Spec Corvette, presented by Nankang Motorsport Tires. One final thank you to our sponsors: Penske Racing Shocks, Nankang Motorsport, Willwood Disc Brakes, TPS Motorsports, Redline Oil, Track Spec Motorsports, Spec Racing, and Sparco USA. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow morning for race number 2.